Hi, I'm Alistair Shipley. Driven by the beliefs that everyone has something special to offer, I created Not So Average, the podcast that proves that you don't need to be in the top 1% to be truly extraordinary. Each episode spotlights everyday people from your community, the very individuals you might pass on the street. These relatable stories reveal that whether you're a jack of all trades or a niche specialist, we all have unique experiences and valuable lessons to share. Imagine if we all took a moment to realize we're all not so average. Let's get after it. Welcome to another episode of Not So Average. I'm your host, Alistair Shipley. Before we get into it, you know what to do. Follow, share, help the community grow. But today, I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Mandy. Now, I know what you're thinking. I've got an expert in podcasts in the studio, so I better stay on top of my game. Mandy is a true marketing guru and a powerhouse in event creation. Known for her work on the Gathering Summit and Rise Women's Conference. Since we first met at a shared workspace in Inglewood, I've been continually impressed by her optimism and her ability to inspire countless founders and leaders. From successfully exiting her company, Date Night, to hosting her own podcast, The Well, and a few others, Mandy has mastered the art of blending personal growth and high-performance leadership. Her expertise in brand development, strategic thinking, and community building has made her a sought-after coach for business leaders around the globe. Let's dive into it. Thanks for joining me, Mandy.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for having me. I love that you said, let's dive into it. I'm like, that's my opening line.
Is that it? Hey?
Yeah, let's dive in. Well, right?
That makes sense. Yeah. It's normally let's get after it, but this time I'm testing out something. But
I like it.
Yeah, so I'm pulling from you today. What first sparked your passion for marketing and personal branding, and how did your journey begin as a marketing guru?
I love that, marketing guru. I wouldn't consider myself a marketing guru, but I guess it has definitely been a part of my career in so many different ways. And I don't think I went seeking it. That's the thing. Everything that I have created, whether it be Date Night, which was my first baby, started in 2014, to the ACE class, to the Rise Women Conference, all of it, it's all come from a why.
Okay.
It's come from a place of something personal to me, a challenge I wanted to solve for myself personally. And so in the first initiation and the first expression of everything I've always done has been, how do I go out and solve this problem? And so really from a deep place of personal connection. And then the marketing and the branding piece of it it's really about, it is the personal growth piece, and it is that blend of personal business, because brand is really just an expression of who you are and what your purpose is and what you're here to do in the world.
I like that.
Right? So marketing is how you communicate and let people know, hey, I'm open for business, but your brand is really about who you are and what matters.
So when did you start becoming conscious of like your personal brand?
I think I became conscious of it I think it was a couple years in. I had this personal motto. Can I swear on this podcast? That's probably
hell yeah. I haven't been explicitly like canceled or anything for that. So
okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I had a personal motto, which is still a life motto for me, and if it's not a fuck yes, it's a no.
Okay.
And a couple years in, that was always something I said. I had rallied my team around it. Your onboarding was, hey, this is how we make decisions in the business. It's got to be a full body resounding yes, or it's a no.
Collectively or individually?
In alignment with the mission.
Okay.
As a team, it was like, are we clear on what the mission is? Does this align? We go. Yes. If it doesn't, we stop.
Okay.
And that has been a guidepost for me in everything, personal, business, relationship, all of it. And I had pins made, I guess, a couple of years into my entrepreneurial journey.
Could have gone nice with the jacket today.
Personal brand is the leather jacket and the fuck yes pin, typically. Probably have one in my pocket. But I started to realize that this pin, it was something that I would take to events with me, and I would hand them to people. And I would share that with them. And they're like, it was so meaningful. It was like, instead of a business card, it was like I was handing them this piece of me and something that was so important. And I was like, here's like a mantra for you.
Gosh.
And this was such a connector for me. Like, people would hit me up on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for this pin. I made a decision based on this, or I realized I was tolerating something and it wasn't a fuck yes and I let it go and it was so awesome. And so that really just became a through line of how people experience conversations with me. And so that's when I realized, I was like, oh, this is what my personal brand is all about. It's about choice, making choices that are really aligned with who you are and what you want.
Jeez. I get the sense that you have a pretty, I wouldn't say easy, but you have a more comfortable way of approaching people. And I feel like you could break ice pretty easily. And I think that's one of the ways that you were doing it. I just imagine that you would go to a networking event and then you see Mandy running around with these, I'm picturing like literally handmade buttons. Here you go.
Well, here's the thing is actually what's funny is that I created those things because I'm so socially awkward.
Yeah.
And I needed that as, okay, how am I going to break the ice and how am I going to connect and how am I going to stand out? And it was probably based on early days going to networking events and feeling really awkward. I remember in a past life before I became an entrepreneur, I was a mortgage broker for a very short period of time.
Flash in the pan.
Flash in the pan. And I went to these like BNI networking events and I was, I don't know, maybe 21, 22 years old at the time. And I remember being so nervous to go into these events on my own. And I would be lingering in the parking lot and I was like waiting. I was watching for like a good opening. I was like, oh, Cessna, who's going to be there? Who's going to be there? And then I'd make my way through the door and then I'd talk to the woman who was giving out the name tags. I was like, oh, nice weather we're having. Hey, here's another minute. And then I was go get my coffee or whatever. And then I remember at these events, you had to go around and everyone had to introduce themselves one by one. And I would be standing over here and there's 50 people that had to introduce themselves before me. So I wasn't present. I wasn't listening to anything. I was so terrified of introducing myself and I had this imposter syndrome being in the room. And early days, I would actually go to the bathroom and I would hide. And I wouldn't take the opportunity to introduce myself. And I lost the opportunity to build my network and build my community because that fear of, oh my gosh, do I belong in this room? How am I going to do it? What are people going to think? Was paralyzing me. And so creating that pin was really just a tool to say, I'm going to overcome this and I'm going to stand out and this is going to be my way to do it. And for years, that actually was a catalyst for how I built events as well, because I recognized that so many other people felt that way. And so many other people also enter the room and they're like, oh, do I belong here?
Yeah.
Do I belong here? Is it going to be enough? And date night, I had speed dating events that I would create, and there'd always be question cards on the table to help facilitate and break the ice for the first question. And then similarly, when I had my women's community, we did these whole brunches based on facilitated conversation and helping people sit beside complete strangers and have intimate, real conversations.
Yeah.
So all of these things were based on this personal experience for me of I'm afraid of I don't belong. And so how can I help others belong? And that's like the deep reason for me.
So by doing this podcast, I find a lot of enjoyment in what I perceive or what I see in somebody now versus where they came from can often be so different. And there's so many people, like I blatantly said, I think her name was Aislinn Grant. I was like, you seem like you're so poised and calm and stuff. And she's like, that's because of where I came from. I was this type before. And you just gave an example of that. Obviously, first 5 minutes into this podcast, you give like a level of energy and presence. And what you're saying is when you were starting out, you had these anxieties and anxious moments. And it's funny because I had that too. I've always been like good with people, but like I would be sick to my stomach if somebody said, okay, now stand in front of this crowd and introduce something. And so I got into door-to-door sales deliberately because I was like, I need to improve my conversation skills. And similar to your situation of hiding in the bathroom at the beginning of these networking events, I was like hiding in the bathroom before the start of every single day of knocking because I was just so anxious. But now I follow, some say it's a Mel Robbins 5-second rule. I had a friend that he just came to himself and he's like, 10 seconds. Don't give yourself more than 10 seconds. If you want to do something, just go and do it. Don't think about it. Just act on it. And I think your button is at like 10 seconds of, I'm just going to give them the button and then everything else just falls into place after. That's great.
Yeah.
That's
and
great.
Look at you now, right? You got a microphone in front of you, and if you don't knock on the door, like there's, you don't make a sale, and you can't guarantee the yes, but every no, like just in your own experience, right? Knocking on doors, it's the action of doing that, whether you get a no and 50 no's or whatever, you become more confident.
So true.
It's powerful.
It definitely has had an impact on this podcast because I wouldn't have reached out to you and I had a connection back in 2014
lifetimes ago at this point.
But to be like, okay, I'm just gonna lob this over. What I'm trying to say is I just threw something over on LinkedIn, and it wasn't like I was trying to run up to you in a crowd and stuff like that.
You just sent me an authentic reach out. You just authentically reached out, and I was like, oh my God, you represent a piece of my life. I haven't seen you since 2014. 2014 was all beginning. There was so much. So it was great to hear from you. I was excited to hear from you.
That's awesome. So let's follow a few questions here. Defining moments. Can you share a key turning point for you? Perhaps around the exit of date night, what significantly influenced your approach to entrepreneurship and branding, which, by the way, date night was such a useful resource when I was in my 20s. I just want to say that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then you went and sold it. But I think that's amazing.
It's still alive and thriving, which is great. I love it. That's what an entrepreneur wants, is to see that they can actually exit something and it can still be going. And I check it every once in a while. I'm like, where should I go on a date? I don't know where to go anymore.
Yeah. But so what's been some turning points for you in your career? That wasn't phrased greatly, but what was a significant point for you in deciding to sell date night?
Yeah, many different turning points. So I guess it's been 13, 14 years of entrepreneurship, 3-4 different business ventures. And like I shared, each of them has all really come from a personal connection or something really personal to me. So entrepreneurship is really just like a vessel for personal growth and who you become in the process. All of your stuff shows up in business.
Interesting.
So if you have any challenges with money, guess what? You're going to have to face it. If you have confidence issues, you're going to have to face it. If you have challenges with communication and relationships, hire a team. The bigger your team gets, the more mirrors are looking back at you. All of this stuff really comes up. And so it's such a journey of growing up. And there's been so many different profound experiences for me in every different season and every different chapter of business. I feel like what I've done is the least interesting part about me and my career. Why I've done it and who I have become are the most interesting. Okay.
So that's been your North Star generally, is what you can become?
It's been the North Star. And I feel there was a lesson that I learned, actually my greatest lesson that I learned through failure was not through date night, but through Branded Magazine. So I had another business in there. Do you remember Branded?
Yep.
So I was simultaneously running 2 startups, 2014 to 2016. And my entire identity was very wrapped up in these businesses. So I identified as being the date night girl and the CEO or the president or the editor of the magazine. And these were how people knew me. They knew me as my businesses. Like before I introduced myself, they knew my business.
Okay.
And so after 2 years of that business, I had a really tumultuous partnership that fell apart, and I ended up having to shut that business down. And after I shut that business down, I had a really hard time looking in the mirror and seeing anything but a failure. And the reason for that is that I had completely wrapped up everything that I was inside of a thing, inside of a business. And when I lost it, who was I without this? Who was I without this? And I feel like we can identify and say, this business is my baby, this is my thing. And that's a term we've all said, but we have to separate ourselves in a really healthy way from that. Your business is not your baby. It is a part of what you do, but it is not who you are. And who you are doesn't matter if your title changes, if the business falls apart, if the project falls through, if you get no's, if you get doors slammed in your face. That has nothing to do with who you are and what you're here, like your purpose and what you're here to do, if that makes sense.
I feel like that's going to resonate with a lot of people that listen to this. Yeah.
You can't take away that. And I had to find myself again. I really lost myself. It was a very challenging year after I shut the business down. I detached from my other business, from date night. So I was just going through the motions. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I had a mentor that helped me establish my core values again and really look at what matters to you, what's important to you. And I remember I had like sticky notes all over an office one day, and I was looking around and I was seeing these words: relationships, community, growth, and that sparked something again in me, and that was the catalyst for the next thing. Mm-hmm. And now that spark is what keeps me going every day. It doesn't matter. Strip away whatever title I have, strip away everything. I have that. And that's what makes me uniquely me. That's what drives me. That's the thread between everything that I say yes to. Those are my fuck yeses. Today, I'm the president of the Gathering Summit, and I'm building a global community. And to me, like, I'm here to help people transform, people, businesses, cultures, leaders transform. Put me in whatever room that I get to do that. I'm living my best self. I am alive in my work. It doesn't feel like work. I can work 80 hours a week or 20 hours a week. It doesn't matter. That energizes and inspires me. Yeah. But when we can get lost in the thing, and then when the thing fails, or if it fails, or if we decide to change direction or pivot, or COVID happens, or something unexpected comes and takes the thing, then you're like, who am I without this? So my encouragement for this has been such a big shift for me, and my encouragement to so many entrepreneurs or leaders, or anyone that's really putting their hand up to do something big and bold, is not think about the how, but think about the why, and think about who you're becoming in the process.
Wow, I'm gonna have to take a second on that one. The association, or I think you used identity. Yeah, how you attach yourself to, whether it's your job, whether it's a hobby, a passion. Yeah, that is super powerful. I'm trying to wrap my head around it still, because it's so interesting, because you start a business because of what it does for you, like the issue that it solves, the community that it can build around it.
Yeah.
But when you detach yourself from that, you're still to be uniquely yourself, but it's such a, I want to say chicken and egg scenario, because they are different, but they have an association with one another, but you have to draw a line at some point. How did that 1 year after Branded go? Did you actively seek out the mentorship that helped you with this kind of stuff? Did you give yourself grace?
It's found me. I definitely did not give myself grace back then. I did not know that word. I was very hard on myself, and I was really pushing myself. I was really feeling like a failure. It was also one of the hardest years of my life. My father passed away that year as well. And so what was very convenient for me was just taking on more and more work and doing more and more, because I also simultaneously I was like experiencing the grief of loss in so many different ways. And so that was the shadow of it. But the beautiful part that came from it is I birthed a whole community out of it, because I knew the importance of connection, and I knew the importance of bringing people together and having real conversations. And I sparked a whole movement out of it. That mirror moment of who am I without this, and finding my core values and recognizing what was important to me, and then realizing, wow, I bet a whole bunch of other people are feeling this way too. I started one brunch that turned into scaling a movement across Canada. In 6 months, 6 cities, 15,000 women. We had an amazing community that was all built from this. Like, it was built from the ashes. And that's where Rise came from. That's where the podcast came from. And I started to really feel so alive in that, and started to really see that was my strength, was bringing people together. And not only bringing people together, but creating spaces for people to have real conversations people don't really have. Like, I don't think people really sit around having conversations about identity very often.
But we should.
Or challenging the deeper meanings, and, talking about failure and how that really lands and how it feels. And so it was very powerful. It was very powerful. So that 1 year of, I was able to transform that really dark season into something that create a big ripple it was beyond me. It's beyond me. And I know that ripple still exists. I get people that reach out all the time and they're like, I used to come to those brunches and I had this amazing connection from there, or I started a business from there, or you helped me realize something, or I left a toxic relationship or something. It's powerful.
Yeah.
When you find your why.
Yeah. I think doing anything with intention leads to like drastic leaps and bounds. Mm-hmm. And I think you found your intention and the proof is in the pudding for this case. I'm very curious. So one thing that you are really good at is like growing a community. And so I'm curious, this isn't a question that I wrote out, but those brunches, how much of it was growth because of the message that you're spreading, and how much of it was just like your knowledge of how to get it in front of the right people?
How much of knowledge of getting in the right people, and then what was the other part?
My curiosity was around the brunches growing to 6 cities in 6 months. And I don't know if you gave a metric of how many people went, but how much of that was because people needed these kind of events and so the message just really resonated, and how much of it was your understanding of how to market it and get it out so people actually saw it?
Yeah, I think it was a blend of both. And if I were to paint the picture back in 2017, what was happening at the time, like the Me Too movement was happening at the same time, women were coming together.
Yeah.
And it was like there was a rocket ship happening simultaneously. So it really picked up because of timing. Mm-hmm. There was readiness from community. They really wanted this. I think back then, which it wasn't even that long ago, but women were fighting for one seat at the table. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's so many more seats at the table now for women, which is great. And it's more of the rule now that we support and uplift each other. But I feel like a lot of us felt like women were in competition with one another. And so this was really refreshing to have a room and experience that was 100% motivated by uplifting each other and having really positive conversations and really honest conversations and really real conversations as well. So I think that the timing certainly lent to the success of the movement. And date night, because I had that at the same time and just had the knowledge base of what it looked like to build an online community and to market something and communicate something, and being able to communicate that message on a platform, that of course was so necessary. If you do not know how to articulate and communicate why we are doing something or what the movement is, you can't invite people in. Okay. So you have to understand what it is that you're inviting people to. Yep. And I was very clear on what I wanted to invite people to. I remember one of the first posts I ever did about the brunch, and at one of the brunches was, I want to impact 100,000 women. And I don't know how I'm going to do that, but we're going to start this first brunch. And what was crazy is I started getting emails out of people being like, I want to volunteer, I want to do this. And then all of a sudden this voice on my shoulder was like, you're going to take this to 6 cities in 6 months. I was like, okay, let's go. I don't know how I'm going to do that. But I didn't do it alone, because I was able to speak it and I was able to invite people in, and people saw themselves in that. And I had community activators and communities building on top of the mission in other cities. So it was bigger than me. I didn't have to fly to all those cities to make those brunches happen. People were chomping at the bits. People were excited to be a part of that. Yeah, I think it was definitely the timing for sure, the intention, and the drive and the passion that I had for that mission, and then just being able to communicate it. And I was shaky as hell back then too, like talking. So it's not like this was easy. Like I was convicted, but I was also feeling vulnerable and exposed. I was just coming off of failure. My dad had just passed away. I remember some of those brunches being like at the front, but I was like, this must be said. Like these are important conversations. But I'm sure other people at the brunches looked at that and they're like, look at Mandy being so authentic and raw and vulnerable. And especially for the topic that you're pushing, I think that just only strengthened everything. Yeah, you're showing up. It's not about perfection. It's not about perfection. No. If we just waited for everything to be perfect, we wouldn't ship anything. Oh my gosh. There's a lot of companies though that are still doing that, or businesses, but let's kind of change gears a little bit. You're known for your expertise in brand and identity development.
How have your diverse entrepreneurial experiences shaped the way you help others discover and redefine their core identity?
I feel like because I've been in the messy middle of that so many times, it's now something that I love helping people with.
Okay.
I love helping people with. What I have learned about crafting, whether it be a business brand or a personal brand or something like that, is we have to really quiet the noise around us and the distractions around us, because it's pretty easy to look around and see what someone else is doing and saying, that looks good, I want that. I'll take that, pack that up. And a lot of people do that. And you can get your brand colors templated or whatever like that. That's easy, but that's not what brand is.
Yeah.
Brand is authentic. It is you. And so you have to really peel away like what everyone else is saying and what everyone else's message is, to ask yourself better questions.
Yeah.
And so when you ask yourself better questions and you get really clear on something that is just so uniquely you, then that's good. That makes you unique. If we're just all walking around wearing black t-shirts all the time, none of us are going to stand out. So I think
I wear a black t-shirt.
As I've got my gray t-shirt on today too. We're killing it in the basics. But yeah, I think it's about what I've learned. It's like asking yourself better questions and really being able to articulate deeper. So like, why is that important to you? Tell me more about that. Where did that come from for you? Mm-hmm. So why is community building important? Like, we can peel back layers and layers, and sometimes people don't even know oh, wow, that just brought up a moment where in childhood I felt like I was picked on or felt like I didn't belong or whatever. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, that's it. See, we have to ask ourselves, why? I don't know who says that, like why 5 times or something. But
I've been trying to figure that out, because there's 7 layers of why.
7 layers of why.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's continue to pull on that thread. And I think it gets deeper and deeper, and you expand more and more in that, because sometimes you think, as an example with date night, I started date night because I was sick of that Friday fight around what do you want to eat for dinner?
Oh my gosh.
And it's, I don't know, whatever you want to do.
You saved and basically allowed for so many relationships to continue.
Yeah, so I was annoyed with that, and that's why I started it.
Yeah.
Right? But then as I have matured and as I have grown and as I have had different relationships, when I look back at that now, it's from such a deeper place. So if we're not fighting over where we go for dinner, what do we get? More time for connection. More time for more.
What does this allow for?
What does it allow for? And really, it's that desire for being seen. It's this desire for intimacy. It's this desire for deeper connection and depth in relationships. Like that, I live for that.
Yeah, I hear that just through this podcast alone, like what you've been saying. I'm getting the sense that brand is something that is so much more intentional than what most people give focus. So the way that you're describing what a brand is, it made me think of some of the companies I've worked for, where they understand the importance of brand, but they see it as just like a cog in the business wheel. They're just like, we got to do it because it's a part of being a business. But then you see brands, and one that I find very powerful, Tom's is a company that I followed for the longest time. Their intention behind their brand and what their brand meant took it as far as it possibly could.
Totally.
Versus there's probably some shoe companies out there that were like, oh, this is good for business.
Yes.
Let's do the same thing.
Yes.
And we've never heard of them, right?
It'll fizzle. To build a brand that lasts, there has to be intent and purpose behind it, because that will stand the test of time.
Yeah.
But if you're just doing something because it's going to be popular or it's going to be well received or it's a trend at the time, it'll fizzle out.
Yeah.
It's hard to put a heartbeat behind that.
Yeah.
So brand is so much more, and there's so many different layers to that.
Yeah. Have you heard of Charity Water?
Yeah.
So
great brand.
Scott, oh my goodness. Before this venture that I jumped into right now, the solar company, I had applied for a role to work with the VP of, I can't remember, but he had an association in Calgary. I've been following Scott Harrison for like ever, and I've always wanted to work for him because of the brand. And the funny thing, the guy that I interviewed with, he was like, I really like your background, I think you could really help with getting donors and all this kind of stuff. He's like, well, we won't sponsor you. And I was like, why is that? And he's like, because of the brand, and everybody's tied to the brand. There's 10,000 applicants for every single job posting.
Wow.
And he's like, we don't need to sponsor you. And it would be really hard for me to say you're the best person for the job when there's 10,000 people applying.
Wow.
And I was like, that's beautiful. I'm really upset, but like you're doing great things. But
so good.
Yeah, so that brand identity is so important, and it has to be thought about. It's not something you just sit down in one morning meeting for a couple hours and be like, let's build the brand. It's no.
And
intention.
It evolves too, right? Like a great brand, it's unfolding. There's a story there, and your community evolves with you too. If you're continuing to connect with them and continuing to listen and understand, like your community is in an evolution as well all the time.
Yeah.
And so a brand is allowed to unfold. Where you started doesn't always need to be where you end. Like it's a beautiful unfolding, right?
Yeah.
But you have to remain attuned to the purpose and how things are shifting. You have to remain attuned to your audience and your community and what they're saying and what they're feeling and what they're expressing as well. And I think that there's fluidity in a brand as well.
Yeah. It sounds like literally a brand has its own life. Like you're basically describing a human's course from birth to end of life. And it's going to take all these different paths, but it's reacting to the circumstances. It's reacting to the community around it. It's
giving people something to be excited about, right? Okay, think about Nike. Nike is one of the most amazing brands.
Been looking at them quite a bit recently. Yeah.
They're amazing. But what makes Nike so amazing? 80% of people that purchase Nike products are not athletes. They don't even work out. But why do they do that? Because of what it stands for and the lifestyle that it stands for. And so when they purchase it, they feel something. They feel like their possibilities got expanded.
And how others see them.
Others see them. So they're like, oh, you're wearing a Nike sweater. You got your Dunks on. That represents something.
Yeah.
And whether it be aspirational or not for that person, like they're stepping into that brand because it makes them, that's something that they desire as well.
Yeah.
So like,
so true.
It's crazy and it's powerful.
Yeah. So other question, with initiatives like the Rise Conference and the Well, how do you design events and communities that truly inspire heart-driven leaders to connect and collaborate and grow? You touched on how you design these businesses around something that you needed. So I'm assuming that's going to tie into this a little bit.
Yeah, I always think about how I can make people uncomfortable, to be honest.
Yeah, if you start them off uncomfortable, it only gets easier.
Yeah, so I feel it's so important for us to take our armor off a little bit if we're going to grow. If we're just playing it safe, whether that's playing it safe on a conversation or playing it safe in anything that you want to do, it's just like playing it safe is like comfort. We're just living life every day like it's the same. It's like Groundhog Day, okay? So if you want to grow, that means something has to change. You have to expand. You have to push outside your comfort zone. You have to push outside of an edge. And so that edge could be as simple as like just an invitation. A lot of my conferences or events or my podcast even, it's asking people questions that really pull on that thread, helps them take their guard down a little bit and be like, oh, no one's ever asked me that before. I haven't done that level of self-inquiry. I haven't really thought about it that way. Oh, I've just been on autopilot. No one's ever asked me that, to stop and take a zoom out and to look. And so whether that for me is some sort of movement-based exercise or breath work or how we're connecting with others through partner work, or hey, I'm pairing you up with someone you've never met before.
Oh boy, yeah.
That in itself is uncomfortable. And especially when you can facilitate vulnerability with strangers, like amazing things can happen there. And so when I think to the brunches or Rise, if people bought tickets to come to this event with someone else, I would intentionally separate them. I would put them beside someone they'd never met before. And people would put a stick up about this. Like, people were upset. They would come and be like, this is a day out with my mom or with my friend or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but guess what happens? If you're sitting beside someone you hang out with all the time, you are going to talk about the same shit that you always talk about. So let me let you get a little uncomfortable. And they always thank me afterwards. So the question in front of them would facilitate with the two of them. It would be an opener. It would be like, hey, what's something changing in your life right now? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you're having a conversation with a complete stranger about something transitioning in your life. And for some of those people, that was loss. For some of those people, that would be a relationship ending or one beginning. Mm-hmm. These human experiences that we all have. And then all of a sudden we're connected. All of a sudden we see ourselves in this person. We realize, oh, I'm not alone in that moment. And that can be so expansive, so heart-opening. And once we're in that place, that's where we can really, but if we are just closed off, if we're the one sitting there that's, this is dumb, I don't want to talk to this complete stranger, or I'm not going to stay because this doesn't feel comfortable, then you hold yourself back from any opportunity for shift and change. And so why does that matter? So if you just allow yourself to stay comfortable all the time, and we can be comfortable. It's cool to be comfortable. Also, we can be happy and content and be comfortable in our life, and that's a good thing. But the difference is if you're going to be complaining about, I'm not growing, I'm not getting what I want. Why? Are you getting uncomfortable? Are you letting yourself get uncomfortable? How you do one thing is how you do everything. So those conversations, they were often a big catalyst for someone taking a bigger leap in their life.
That's great. So pulling your own thread there, what's a question that nobody's ever asked you that you wish you could have answered? This is actually not my own question. I used to listen to Lewis Howe's School of Greatness, and he asks that quite frequently.
So the question is, what's the question no one's asked you?
Yeah, that you wish you could be asked.
It's so interesting because as a community builder and someone that builds all these things, I often wish I had rooms like the ones that I create. And any of these questions we've talked about, I always need these reminders. I always need these things for others to ask me. I think I feel like it's like, how are you really?
Yeah.
It's simple. Mm-hmm. How are you really? And as someone that creates space for other people, sometimes behind the strength of what it took to put an event together or build a business or get through the doors of something, sometimes I haven't been okay behind the scenes. And there were many years and many seasons that I felt that I actually needed to deplete myself in order to build for others. I've had to reconcile that.
Was that a scenario of, you said that you're trying to build for others. Was that so that they could see you? Was that so that you felt accomplished in yourself? Like, why were you doing that for them? What was in it for them that was in it for you? Yeah,
so deeply. It totally was in it for me because at the end of the day, I was like, I know they need this. And so I got to benefit from that. And I think there's a duality to it. It's not black or white, but I feel like I was just expressing through what they needed, but I didn't know. I actually think it was just that at those times I didn't know how to let both of those live, create and then take space and boundary and fill back up. And that's why my podcast now, it's The Well, and it's really about this. This is everything that I speak about now. It's, if you're going to be someone that puts your hand up for a big mission, if you're going to create spaces, if you're going to be a community builder, if you're going to do big things in your life, you also need to understand how to fill yourself back up, because we give and we give and we give and we give, and that's great. And in order to do that from a really whole, healthy place, you also need to find things that fill you back up and fill the well and replenish. Otherwise, you're just giving from, the saying is, you can't pour from an empty cup. And if we're going to make changes for the collective and really make this world a better place, honestly, it starts with how we are showing up as leaders.
That brings me back to a partner I had several years ago, she used to say, and people have always said this, I only have so many spoons to give. And then it was like, how do we give you more spoons?
Yeah.
And so that replenishment was so important. But I don't know if you've realized this, because obviously you've done podcasts, you've done this community building. It's so interesting when you start to look into what it takes to be a better communicator. Now, this isn't my own thought. I got this from You're Not Listening is the book. I forgot who the author is, but I quote it quite a bit. And in order to become a better listener, we have to detach ourselves and our ego, because there's constantly this scenario of, I want to quickly respond to what you have to say. And we think that we're adding value to you, but it's for us to feel like we're the intelligent one. Or often when we're doing something for other people, it's because we're doing it actually for ourselves, because we feel like that gives to them, but gives to us. And that's been such an interesting thing for me in this development year for me, of how do I hear people without trying to impose my views and let them actually feel heard. And generally it's fucking shut out my ego, just leave it at the door. I don't know if you've experienced that at all.
Powerful. These are things that they need to teach us in school.
But how?
Yeah. It's, asking better questions, listening. Really what you said is so powerful. Everyone at the end of the day wants to be seen and heard as well. And sometimes we're just talking over each other, trying to be right. Who can be more right here? And that's not helping us connect. That's not helping. Like, everything you're saying is 100% right. Everything I'm saying is 100% right for me.
Yeah.
And for you. And if we can learn how to really slow down and have conversations where those both get to exist, it's so powerful. We get to learn so much from each other.
People find it so weird, but I wish conversations were more like the podcast that I'm having. I legitimately had somebody today tell me like, hey, you got to stop talking to me like this is a podcast. I was like, no, this is how I actually talk. I want to get down to the nitty gritty. I want to like anything that's off the table. Let's talk sex, religion, money, all that stuff. Because it's obviously points that are important to every person.
Yep.
So why don't we ever talk about it? And they're like, okay. But it was just so interesting. It's just like the matter of me asking questions made them uncomfortable versus living in a satire and just let's just make fun of everything and like make out future scenarios and not actually be authentically present of what we're saying right now.
Yeah, I think it does make a lot of people uncomfortable because it's not so common.
Yeah. I'm sure that's a big part of your community events of like, how do you make these conversation points you can have on your own without a curation?
Yeah. And talking about more than the weather.
Oh, I don't think I've actually talked about the weather in a long time. When it's sunny like today, you'll walk outside and appreciate it.
You appreciate it, yeah.
What are some not so average tactics or strategies you've employed in your marketing efforts that have set you apart from the norm?
I don't like tactics.
Okay. Probably could have used a better word, but...
Strategies, yeah. Not so average strategies that really... It's been about community, and I'll share this. During COVID, like flashback to 2020, my community, my business model at that time was live events. So overnight, I had no business. 85% of my revenue was all in live events, and all of them were canceled indefinitely. And then I had two businesses at the time. I had Date Night, and then I had Ace/Rise. And so advertisers were canceled, subscriptions were canceled. There was nothing. And I said, what does the community need right now? We need conversation. We need a sense of routine in a really crazy time. And so I started a series on Instagram, and I did Instagram Lives called Morning Mindset. And it was 8 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. every day. I did this for 150 days. Straight. I showed up at 8 a.m. Some days I would have something prepared. Some days I'm like, I got nothing. But I showed up, and it was the intention around, in a crazy time, we need a sense of normality. We need community. We need connection. And we need something that we can be in control over, because we can't control anything right now. And so the questions, I would ask the same 5 questions every day, and then I would build a show around whatever was coming up. And the questions were, how do I feel this morning? How do I want to feel? How will I show up today? What am I grateful for? And what will make this a great day? And that mindset shift that people started their day with allowed them to go back and serve their communities and show up more present in their life. And it also brought us all together in a time that we were really disconnected. That coming together, I had a lot of different guests that came on. We did IG Lives together. I had like Wellness Wednesday with one of my friends come on. I had different guest speakers. I would read poetry someday. We did yoga, breath work. Like, it was crazy. This thing took on a whole world of its own. And so that really sparked the next thing. I built an online community. I started coaching. I started like this staying in motion, like just doing something and saying, what does the community need? Here's the brand expression piece. It's ever unfolding. I continued to tune in and to continue to ask the questions, and that gave me the compass for what was next in my own brand evolution and what was next in my coaching community and what was next for what that community really needed. So that was the catalyst for the next thing.
Are you still utilizing those 5 questions every day?
I use them almost every day.
Amazing.
And they're so simple. And it's whether you have 5 minutes or 2 hours in the morning, those simple questions can really shift your entire energy of your day. All we're in control over really is how we respond to life and how we show up, and just being intentional with setting, hey, I want to show up present today. That will help you turn your phone over a few more times, or connect a little bit deeper with someone, or making a decision like, I want to show up compassionate today will help you soften that voice of doubt in your mind, or be more compassionate for a team member or a significant other or whatever. But that level of intention, it's a very simple questions and a big shift.
I'm definitely going to add those to the show notes just so that they're presently there, because I think we all could use those.
I love it.
Where did your sense of mindfulness come from? Was this something that you just grew into? Was it something that like you had a need to resolve and you decided to start focusing down that path? You just seem very mindful.
Thank you. I can't remember when I wasn't like this. I ran into an old friend that I went to university with recently, and they're like, I love seeing everything you're up to. You've always been like that, hey? And I was like, really? Okay, I guess
That's
so.
nice.
At a young age, my mom brought me along with her to all the seminars and personal development things that she was a part of. And
who were her go-tos? What did she go to?
Oh gosh, I don't even remember what the things were, but it was like the health and wellness seminars and Eckhart Tolle, and we'd go to the women's show, and we'd just she immersed me in this stuff really young. And my mom was a single mom who raised me and my brother on her own, and she was a very positive influence on me. And she was an entrepreneur as well, and like she made shit happen, and she worked really hard, and she had grit and resourcefulness, and I think I got so much from her in that.
Sounds like a powerhouse.
Yeah, and she also taught aerobics when I was super young, and I would go to her aerobics classes, and she would teach seniors in like pool aerobics as well. And so I would be like man in the ghetto blaster, like literally, and
with the cassette tapes.
Yeah, with the cassette tapes. And my mom would be doing step classes and like all the things, and I was just a tag along. So I feel like I was exposed to just that energy of 1% better every day and showing up and playing all out really young.
How much of your direction in your life do you think is associated to environment? You indicated your mom brought you to all these things, and you've always, as your friend said, you've always just been this way. Was this the path that you were going to take because of environment, or was this something that you might have made a conscious decision on when you were a little younger?
Yeah, I don't know if I ever thought that there was a different path to take. As I was a kid, I remember drawing pictures of, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be a CEO. Like, that's who I saw myself as being. I always saw myself as a leader. Now, I have lost my way a few times over the years, and younger, there was a decade of my life that was pretty troubled. And I had to get myself back on this track, but it's definitely been intrinsically a part of me, and I've just constantly seeked different rooms that had great examples of people that are choosing their own path. And I'm like, get me in that room. I want to go to the next room.
And now you are creating those rooms for other people.
It's so important, honestly. And if you feel like you're the smartest person in the room, you need a new one. And you have to keep meeting that edge and keep challenging yourself. When I stepped into this role 2 years ago, I was on the board of a different organization. I was on the board for Brand Hall of Fame, like all these things. The people that were at the table, I was like, oh my God, I don't belong here. But I know when I feel that way now,
you're in the right room.
I'm in the right room. That is the right feeling. That is exactly where you want to be. That's the sweet spot of growth. And this was one of the most stretching, expansive years for me as a leader, because I was put in rooms and put myself in rooms that I felt that way over and over again. And it's that discomfort. You got to step in.
Man. Like you said, you build things for a purpose for yourself. Literally, I built this podcast because I was missing something in my own life.
Yeah.
And so having these interviews with people like really gets me jazzed. And everybody's like, you're hustling all the time. I was like, no, this is my reset on Sunday when I do my recordings that sets the path for the rest of my week.
Yes.
Like I am pumped the rest of the week. And my co-founders and stuff decided that they were going to get on Monday morning, 8 a.m. meetings. And I'm like mostly productive at 9 o'clock to 11 is like my time frames. And now I'm just like, I'm jazzed. I want to start the day as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Like I'll even hit the gym beforehand. Like
I love that.
Life's changed. But yeah, so I appreciate hearing your stuff here, and I'm just smiling ear to ear, and that's why I record it so you can see it. Okay. Integrating personal growth. So you did mention growth as an aspect. So as someone who coaches leaders on reclaiming their time and leveling up their leadership, how do you blend personal growth with business success in your own life?
I don't know any other way to do it. It's a hard, that's literally a hard question to ask, because to me, they are the same.
How you show up at home is how you show up in business.
How you show up, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And to me, so I'll give an example of this for other people that are listening. The promises that you keep with yourself are incredibly important. This represents your relationship with yourself. If you are someone that says you're going to do things, you're going to get up early, you're going to hit the gym, you're going to complete the 30-day challenge, you're going to get up and go for a run, whatever it is that you're saying you're going to do, if you are not keeping that commitment with yourself, you're capping what is possible in your life. You're showing yourself the relationship that you have with you, and you're showing other people how to treat you. Commit to yourself. And don't try and do 100 things. Try and do one thing. This is what humans do. We're like, January 1st, I'm going to do all the goals. I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to hit my health. I'm going to be the 10x version of myself, blah, blah, blah. And then we have 2 good weeks of running. And then I think there's an actual quitter's day. And I think it's like January 11th or something. Like it's a national quitting day. And it's not too far after January 1st.
Man.
So this says enough in itself. People are trying to take on so many things, and then they quit. Because they get overwhelmed. They can't sustain it. It's not sustainable. And then they feel crappy, and then they stay comfortable. And then they're like, nah, I'll just watch TV. And then they go through the motions of getting up, alarm clock goes off, hit snooze, get up late, feel crappy, make 5 coffees to get through the day, go to work, get home, scroll a little bit, watch Netflix, make dinner, go to bed, and the cycle continues. However, if you decide you're going to just do one thing for yourself and you prove to yourself, I'm going to keep that one promise to myself, it shows you, it's like proof, it's like creating evidence. You are capable of doing big things in your life. With my clients, one of the first things that I have them do is take a 30-day commitment to one thing. Either one thing that they're going to release in their life. So maybe that's an addiction. Maybe it's alcohol. Maybe it's fast food. Maybe it's ordering DoorDash, or it's an addition. And that might be, I'm going to commit to going to the gym every single morning, or doing a 30-minute walk, or whatever. What that commitment does is it increases capacity. Okay, you getting this?
Yeah.
That promise, we look for evidence of all of the ways that we suck all the time.
Mm-hmm.
This promise and this commitment is proof and evidence of all the ways that you follow through and that your word is important. We have to be in integrity with ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to commit to ourselves in the smallest ways so that we can do the big things.
Yep.
The leader that wants their team to show up, be on time, and give the best of themselves must model that.
Mm-hmm.
They must model that. So everything that you want in your relationship, in your career, in your bank account, it starts with you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to start making shifts, start by keeping one promise to yourself. And that one thing is often the domino to something really, really good.
Yeah. That is another good one. Because I was listening to a podcast and they were basically just mentioning, like, at the end of the day, you have to be accountable to yourself because nobody else is going to see you day in, day out. And we've often had those good friends. Like I have quite a few of them that are like, oh, you're doing such great work. Like, go easier on yourself. You woke up late. You didn't hit the routine. You gave the appearance of whatever goal. And then everybody's like, yeah, you did it good, but you can't cheat yourself. You can never cheat yourself.
Yeah, and it's not about perfection either. And here's the thing, it isn't about perfection, but it's rearranging yourself. So if you have a commitment to go to the gym every day at 6 a.m. and you're like, hey, my body really needed rest today, so I didn't go. That was a choice. Yeah. You rearrange and you're like, I went at 6 p.m. I reset it and go back and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I go on trips and travel, it's like my AG1 comes with me, my gym stuff comes with me. Like
your LinkedIn
I pack
post,
my suitcase full of things that are really important to my health and well-being. My bands come with me. I'm doing this no matter what. That is my commitment to myself. That's how I pour into myself so that I can pour into everything else that I'm doing, so that I can pour into my relationship, my business, my team, my purpose. So it's not always convenient. Mm-mm. It's not always convenient.
No.
But be the person that keeps promises to yourself.
I like that. Yeah. Now I remember your LinkedIn post of here's where I'm going. And then I think that you're going down to Utah.
Yeah.
And we talked on that point. But I find it so interesting. I did have a friend that reached out to me and he said, I'm going through a hard time. And I asked him because he was on going to the gym quite frequently. And I was like, are you going to the gym? And he said, no, I don't have the energy. And I told him in the moment, like most people have this belief, and I call it a belief because it's just, there's no backing behind it whatsoever. We just do this. And it's that we need to have the energy to go and do the thing versus realizing like by doing the thing, you receive the energy. And I was like, go to the gym, you'll find the energy. And then you'll create it. And then that habit will continue.
Totally.
And the gym is like the perfect example of this because everybody thinks I'm exerting energy, therefore I need to have energy.
Yeah.
But you actually just got to show up and it creates the energy. Maybe that first workout isn't your best output, but it starts from there. It starts from there.
You got there.
Just
get out the door and commit to a 10-minute walk. Because guess what? You got to walk 10 minutes home too.
Yeah. I like that. Once you get to the point, you got to return back. Yeah. Other question, redefining success. So looking back on your own journey, how do you define success for yourself today? And how has that definition evolved as you've navigated different roles and challenges?
Yeah, that it's definitely, success has looked so different for me over the years. Today, the KPI I measure my life with is how present I am and how much peace I feel.
Okay.
And that is like peace in my relationship with myself, peace in my marriage, just peace in the day-to-day. And the level of presence is, am I distracted? Am I in every room that am I in? Am I picking my phone up all the time? Am I taking on 100 things? That was the old version of me. Because my old version of success was do more and have as many like accolades and things and cool projects that I said yes to. And don't get me wrong, I love doing lots of stuff. We haven't lost our edge. If anything, I do more with more presence now.
Amazing.
And with more intention now. The old version of success was like, let's say yes to everything and do all the things. But the old version was really depleting herself in the process and feeling like I needed to say yes to all the things in order to be enough. And in order to be seen like I was qualified enough or had enough credentials or whatever. The new me trusts herself and the journey that she's been on and can decide what enough is in any course of a day. My life is very full. I'm a part of lots of things. It will that energizes me, but I'm a part of the right things and things that are really meaningful for me, and do my best to give my full presence to all those things. Now, that is also a calibrator for me and a check-in point when I notice I am distracted, because it's not perfect. Present every day. I'm not present at every meal with my husband. There's things going on. And so that's a check-in. What's pulling from my presence? How can I get that back? How can I reset? How can I recommit to that? Or peace. Why am I tolerating chaos right now? Like, I got to clean my kitchen. And it's small things. It's last weekend, I spent a couple hours, and I got my husband's help. Thank him for this. I was like, these cords are driving me crazy because they were pulling from my peace.
Yeah.
And I was like, how have I been sitting here and tolerating all these cords for so long? And they were representing chaos to me. How you do one thing is how you do everything. I was like, we must clean these cords. Amazon ordered the cord,
the cord organizers,
the cord organizer thing. I was like, we need this right now. And so it's about spotting, okay, this is pulling from my success. This is pulling from my presence. This is pulling from my peace. And we adjust and we reset. My cords look great. Thank you, husband. Thank you, James.
So your husband's also an entrepreneur, correct? So you're both high achieving individuals. How has your relationship with each other helped you build the businesses that you have?
Oh man, we play so many roles to each other, and it's been such a blessing to have another leader and an entrepreneur in my life like James. And I feel the other day I said to him, I was like, thanks for growing up with me. Like, we've both been through so many different seasons of our business and our leadership together. So it's been really enriching and at times really chaotic. I remember back to the early days when James and I both collectively, we had 5 or 6 businesses between the two of us. And it was like just a balancing act of, okay, you'll be there, I'll be there, I'll see you later, meet me for a drink, like just chaos. And I think for the two of us now, we are getting to this place where it's do less, more intention. Like we've both been on this path together, and it's also been life design together too, because we are laptop warriors. We've traveled the world together. Like, we've been to so many amazing places, and the computer and the work has come with us. And there's been times where we also got our assistants to change our passwords and not check email for a month and had time away as well.
Amazing.
But I don't know, we understand what it takes and the ebb and flow of that. And James has come in and supported my business, and equally have been able to go in and support him at different times. And it's nice to have someone else to talk about the struggles that we have all the time. And we have also had to find boundaries around that and find our own peer groups and our own mentors outside of it, so that it's not fully always about work. And I think there was probably a pivotal point like 5 years ago where we both realized that, like, all we talk about is work. So how can we shift? How can we bring energy back to ourselves? And your partner can't be all things to you at all times. And so it's so important that you have other outlets to talk about the problems at work, to get mentorship, to get peer guidance, experience shares, all that. So James and I have independent coaches. We have our own groups, our own communities as well. And that allows us to be more present with each other too. So we've had to learn that.
That's great. I like, personally, there's the conversation of life, work, balance, but I'm more of a life work blend. Yeah,
me too. It's harmony.
I've not coined it, totally stole it from Jeff Bezos.
I
but
like it.
You seem to be there too. And there's a side of, I'm just smiling because like that's the kind of relationship I can really appreciate. And I love the fact that you guys traveled and you brought your laptops, but it was like you were afforded the ability to travel because of the businesses that you've built.
Totally.
And versus just hunkering down in an office and just staying there and just being like, we'll get to it someday.
Yeah,
it's like someday is now.
Yeah.
And we did it together.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. So that's a great description of success. We only have a couple more questions. We're going to wrap it up. It's flying by. So unconventional paths. Our podcast celebrates those who take uncommon routes to success. Can you share a moment when you chose a less traveled path that ultimately led you to breakthrough in your career?
I feel like all of it is like less traveled. I don't know if people sign up for this. As I consider myself a visionary, and I consider myself, and what comes with the territory of being a visionary is you're often blazing a trail that people don't necessarily understand from the beginning. You're like, I see we're going over here. Mm-hmm. This is where we're going. And there's no roadmap to follow. And that takes a whole lot of trust and conviction in yourself too.
You have to create your apostles.
You've got to, yeah, exactly. And so I feel like all of it has been a little untraveled, or just saying like, I want to do this a little bit differently, or no one's having this conversation or solving this problem, you know? I can look at that example in all the places, like with ACE and RISE, and the mission was, I want to bring business and personal together. Mm-hmm. And I think spirituality has a seat at the table. And I think we should do breath work and business visioning. And people are like, huh? And then I'm like, yeah, just trust me. It's going to be great. And my last RISE conference, I had 150 women there. Everyone was laying down and we were doing breath work. And everyone at first was a little bit like, what is this? And then the ideas that came from that and the spark, right? And so it took a level of trust to be like, I'm going to do this different. And just trust me, just come along for the ride. And that has always paid off for me, because it's given me an edge. We're going to do it in the Mandy way, a little bit different.
Love that.
So if you're going to be a visionary, if you're going to blaze a trail, it's going to come with a whole lot of rejection, is my cautious on that. And you get to just let rejection ride in the front seat. Don't let it drive. It's there to remind you that you're actually doing something right. And similar, with that kind of voice of doubt or that imposter syndrome we talked before, feeling like you don't belong in the room, that's a growth edge. So trust yourself and keep moving and keep blazing your own trail.
This question just came to me when you were talking about the breath work leading to a bunch of ideas. I really clung to, it was a podcast. No, it was Tim Ferriss was talking about the busyness manifesto and like how often we are so focused on being busy. How often do you ask a friend, like, how have you been? And like, oh, busy. That's a point of pride. But then I ran down this rabbit hole, and it was creativity comes from moments of boredom and downtime. And obviously you are very much a creative, but you're also very busy all the time. Where do you find your creative ideas come from?
Walks.
Okay, so you do give yourself downtime.
Oh, I prioritize downtime.
With or without audio?
No audio. So okay. I feel like I love podcasts and audio and all that as well. Like I love to consume, but you can't be in consumption all the time. So there's seasons where you have to just let go of consumption because you're in creation. So you have to know what season you're in. And there's times when you have to really quiet all the noise and listen to yourself. And I think it's so important that we create intentional spaces that we can just tune in and say, what's going on? How are you doing? What are you thinking about? And that's where really the ideas start to connect, and how we problem solve and how we make decisions quicker and all of that. I feel a walk for me is it's the time to wrestle with an idea. It's time to create. It's time to check in. It's time to set an intention for the day. Like I'll take my dog out and do my best to just, hey, Tony, which route do you want to go on today? Board. Let's go. Right or left from the house? Okay, we're going there. Mm-hmm. And on those walks, it brings so much clarity. And it can be, when you notice yourself wanting to reach for something, like, where are my headphones? Where's the podcast?
You're too dependent.
Where are my podcast friends? And that's a sign that you maybe need to get uncomfortable and tune into yourself. So give yourself the space. I do an integration day once a month, and that integration day it's Bill Gates used to do think weeks all the time.
Yeah.
My husband and I do think weeks, and a think week is like time off the grid, where you are really just going to think. Like exactly that. It's taking a week to think about your next evolution, think about what you've just been through, think about your next move, your next strategy, whatever. Not all of us have a week all the time, so you could do this in an afternoon. I do a day. So the last Friday of every month is my integration day, and I'll get myself into a new environment, whether it's a cafe I've been wanting to go to, or I love driving up to Canmore when I have the space to do it, out of my office, and I look through my calendar. I'm like, what did I learn this month? Where did my energy go this month? How am I feeling? It's time to intentionally integrate and look at the lessons. We're zooming from one thing to the next, and it's so busy all the time. And so we have to take these intentional moments to slow down. The integration is the work. It is the growth.
Yeah.
And we need to recognize this. Like high achievers as well, this comes up with my clients all the time. They're like, I can't take a break. I don't have time for rest. I don't have time for that. Integration is a part of the work. It is not a departure from the work. It is the work. Integration is not a departure from the work. It is the work. Rest is a part of the process. And we need to learn that it's not something you have to earn. It is necessary. It's necessary in the becoming process, in the rejuvenation process. It is so a part of it. And especially as entrepreneurs or creators, all of us need it, but we really need this time to reconnect with ourselves and reconnect with our why, because quite frankly, it's hard. And you need like a bag full of whys all the time to remind you, like, why am I doing this? This is so hard. And those days and those time, like, they allow you to reconnect.
I personally needed all of that. I'm going to soundbite this just for myself. I
have some really great prompts for integration day as well. I'll share them with you and anyone else that wants them as well. Okay. But because some people are like, what do I do on this day? You don't check emails. This is not a work catch-up day.
No.
This is a check-in with you day and a reconnection with your vision. And generally, I love having you have some sort of vision statement that you're coming back to, or your annual goals that you're coming back to, and you're saying, am I aligned? Am I moving in the direction of those things? What am I tolerating? What are the frustration points? What's going well? What can I celebrate? What have I moved through? What am I proud of? It really comes back to contributing to, again, that like bank of evidence that you're doing great things. And it gives you the opportunity to also slow down and celebrate your progress. And we're all chasing this like invisible finish line that doesn't exist because the goalpost keeps moving and the bar keeps raising. And we just keep, okay, cool. When are you going to stop? If we never arrive, right? We have to decide, and we have to create these little anchoring points for us to pause.
Make it for yourself.
Yeah, you got to make it for yourself.
Oh man. I'm going to approach this podcast very much like I do traveling. I realize I'm not going to get everything that I want in one podcast because there's just so much to unravel. And I thought I could do it. There might have to be a second one some other day because this was so much more. We'll continue
the combo. It's great. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so can I like flip the script?
Go for it.
What's the question you want someone to ask you?
I should have seen that one coming. At the end of the day, I should have seen that one coming. Probably the question of like, why do I do what I do? And I am very much a person that's always in motion. I don't sit idle for very long. I have started to integrate these times for pause. Like meditation's been a big thing for me the last 150 or so days. So I'm new. I'm a newborn baby on this one, and intentionally giving myself evenings and stuff like that. But why I do what I do, I still have a mission, and I still kick myself for it because I haven't accomplished it. It's been on my goal. It's one of my goalposts since I was about 22, 23. I wanted to help retire my parents. Unfortunately, I have not. My parents have since retired, but I want to add to their life. I think there's an aspect of I just want to give back, and I haven't felt like I have yet. I've been selling myself short. And that comment of you can't cheat yourself, there's a lot of friends that I have that will tell me that I've done very well. And this isn't a case of you're always your hardest critic.
Yeah.
I know that there's more in the gas tank. There's so much more. Like I'm probably running on a half tank. There's so much fire to come. That's a good question.
Why is it important to you?
Why is it important to me that I have to give back? I've always believed that you should leave the world a better place than when you came. Kind of the whole idea of a campsite. I always had this as a kid. We went camping a lot with the family, and it was always leave the campsite in a better state than in which you found it. And I want to do that. So whether I have kids or not, I want their life to be better because I was here. Whether my relationships with my friends gets to that point at end of life, I want it to have been a positive. So I had somebody in earlier today that I interviewed, and his mission was just basically to make one life better. And he's done that for thousands in his profession. And I think, I just want to make a few more lives better.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so powerful.
I appreciate that.
What you're doing is amazing. And there's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes of building a podcast, building a community, having these types of conversations. Like you truly are a community builder, even if you don't see yourself in that yet. But
I appreciate that because I look up to your community building skills.
You can only see it if you have it. You spot it, you got it. But the one conversation you have no idea the impact that one conversation can have on people. And so it's such a ripple. So keep doing what you're doing. And I would love to come back and we'll have another combo. So.
Oh man, I'm going to set it for like a reminder to check in because I'd love that. As we wrap up, what final insight or message would you like to leave our listeners to inspire them to forge their own unique, not so average paths to success?
2 things. 1, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a no.
I definitely want to end on that. That's great.
And 2 is turn down the noise so that you can tune into yourself.
So we got to the end of this podcast with Mandy Balak. I'm so glad that you guys made it all the way. These are the friends and the listeners that I really appreciate, especially when you're starting a blossoming podcast. You know what to do. Help us get it out there, and let's get after it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
That was awesome. Thank you so much.